I'm James Fratzke, and this is Leaders. There's this quote I really love by Sir Isaac Newton. It goes like this: "If I've seen further than others, it's by standing upon the shoulders of giants." So Leaders is an opportunity for you and I to stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from their journey. On each episode, I'll interview a proven leader, CEO, entrepreneur, or founder and unpack their story of success. Today, I talked to Charles Bruce. Charles came from a poor family and made his own way. And that's what I loved listening to him tell me in this interview you're about to listen to. His stories were just so grounded in reality, in grit, and hard work. He came from a poor family and made his own way, deciding to go to college because he knew it was his only way out. Charles went on to be the CEO of 2 major companies. His latest stint was as CEO of Johnny Rockets. We talked about travel, fitness, and goal setting. There are lots of great golden nuggets from start to finish, including his 3 C's and how to deal with unreasonable people. Enjoy my conversation with Charles Bruce. Charles, thanks for being on the show today. We appreciate your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
You know, we did a lot of research over here on your life, and one of the things that was most interesting to me, and I figured we would start right here, was you've been to over 70 countries. Is that true?
It absolutely is true, and I've been to many of them many times.
So why? I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. I grew up in a small rural town, and where people in my hometown, my family, other than my dad going and fighting in World War II, no one ever went anywhere. I mean, they're still there. And I've always had the desire to visit the world. And I've always been a Renaissance guy, though I didn't realize until I got older. And so I was determined one way or another, I was going to go see the world. And I had no money. So I thought, international business would be a wonderful way to do it. And it's been fantastic. Believe me, it really has.
So your goal was, hey, I'm going to see the world. The best way to do that is to pick a major and get into a career that basically will pay to send me around the world and meet new people and see new things.
That is exactly right. And back then when I went to college, I wanted to at least speak one other language. So Spanish made the most sense then. So I learned to speak Spanish fluently, studied in Mexico also at a place called Universidad Iberoamericana. And if I were to do it today, I'd study Spanish and Chinese Mandarin, by the way, because that would be important to speak that language. But yeah, so set myself up, understanding how businesses work, being able to speak another language, and being willing to travel. And I did it.
I love that. Well, let's talk about that. I mean, you had a goal and you accomplished it. How important has that been in your life?
It is absolutely critically important. And I was very specific my entire life about setting goals for where I wanted to be in terms of my title and my position, my income level, et cetera, by what ages. And I accomplished all of those. It's really important because you can't leave your life to chance and just random events. There are many things in your life you can't control, but there are many things you can control. And I look at it, I came up through marketing, although I never studied it. It's like a marketing plan. You got to execute the plan. What is your strategies to advance your career and achieve your objectives? And then you have to begin implementing it, executing it. And then you're going to find your course corrections along the way. But I'm very, very focused and very dedicated to achieving my objectives.
And congratulations. I mean, you've really risen from, in your bio, you talk about being from poor rural Kansas and being the first person in your family to graduate college, and then rising to the level of CEO, not in 1, but 2 companies. Those are not small accomplishments, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. If my conversation I started earlier today before this call goes, I'll be doing it for a 3rd time. So we'll see.
We look forward to that. That was one question I was going to ask you. Is it, seeing your life trajectory, it doesn't seem like you're done. It doesn't seem like you're going to ride into the sunset and just retire, does it?
No, I absolutely am not. I have no intention of doing that. I'm a very high energy guy. I say type A people are too laid back for me. I mean, I'm a very high energy guy. I'm very experienced. I'm in tremendous physical and shape and good health. And my true objective, though, is I love to interact with people. I love to engage in conversation, and I love to share what I know with others. Hey, look, if I can rise from being a poor guy in rural Kansas to do what I've done, there are plenty of people out there that could benefit from mentoring that I could give them and give them a chance to achieve their goals also.
You know, there's so many things in that last statement that we could unpack, but I want to go back a little bit and talk about the goal setting and get a little bit more tactical and unpack it. Are there certain ways that through your life that what are those tactics? Do you write it down in a book? Do you put it on a dream board? I mean, what are those things for you to track and make sure you're staying on track with your goals?
Well, a lot of it, I'm fortunate to have a very good memory, and a lot of it I just keep in my head, okay? But I was always, I am a prolific note taker. And I'm again a Renaissance guy, so I'm less good with technology, but I'm really good with a pen and pencil and paper. And so I've always written things down and kept a lot of notes. I had that Stephen Covey, I forget what that system was called. And I hundreds of pages of notes and things that I wrote down. A plan really, just like I've done in my business life. First thing I go in when I go over, whether I'm leading a department or heading the company as a CEO to turn it around, before I ever, as I say, fire a shot, I sit down and write the plan out because it's got to be in writing. People have to be able to understand it and follow it. And so I did the same thing with my own life. It's really applying my life lessons to business.
Now, you talked about fitness. You're a healthy guy. How has staying healthy played into your success? And maybe you can walk us through a little bit about, what are those things that you do in your life to stay healthy?
Well, for one thing, it's critically important. As I've said to people that I've talked to, hey, listen, owners, investors want their senior executives to be like their budgets, which means they're lean, okay? We don't want a lot of fat and sloppy things around here because the old thing about, throw something against the wall and see what sticks. That's the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard. No one can waste resources like that. You're there to create value with the resources that you have. Same way in your life. I was smart enough to realize that growing up, don't smoke, okay, for one thing. That is just because I saw so much death in my family from smoking. Low-income people smoke, a lot of them died from it. And then also, I had to do a lot of hard physical work, and I love sports. I played a lot of sports, so that got me in really good physical shape. And it's all about diet and exercise. But for example, when I went to work at Pizza Hut, I'll tell you how important it is that you look right. Pizza Hut at that time was owned by PepsiCo. PepsiCo had KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, Pepsi, Frito-Lay, etc. A really, really high level, highly charged, competitive environment, and I loved it. But they used to say, and these aren't my words, I'm just playing back what the words of the industry were at that time. If you were going to go to work for Pepsi, you had to be Pepsi pretty.
Right.
So, all right. You better look right. Back then, of course, we had to wear suits, make sure you had the shoes with the right tassels, the right length red tie, and it's not that strict anymore. But your first impression that you leave with people is highly important. When they see you, we all do that. Well, right away, people start making assumptions about who you are, how you live, what you're going to be able to do, and you only get one chance to do it. So it's really, really important. Besides that, the most important thing, I work out every day because it makes me feel really good.
Pepsi pretty. I love that. I was at Disney, and, about 10 years ago, they had these strict rules about making sure your face was shaven and you were clean cut and you had the Disney look. And I think there's this culture shift today where a lot of maybe millennials that are getting into the workforce kind of react in a sense of, well, no company has the right to tell me to dress a certain way or to act a certain way. Do you think that that's a miss on the millennials' part, that's a missed opportunity for them to get that job or start in a career that they're passionate about?
I absolutely think that, because it's a discipline to be able to maintain yourself, carry yourself, do things in a certain way, in a way that it gives people confidence that you're able to do the job they're considering hiring you for. Remember, what do we do when we get hired? We're there to create value. Okay, because you're going to consume resources to do your job. You better create value that are greater than the resources you're going to consume. How do you do that? How do you get the chance to do that? I think to go in and say, well, look, in many respects, I'm a very free spirit also. I'm very bold, I'm very aggressive, but I'm never careless or reckless. And I think people want to have confidence that you're able to do that. And to be honest with you, I think millennials, when they walk in, because I've interviewed them. I mean, when a guy walks in and he's got a button-down collar, but it's unbuttoned and his hair's messed up, and I got to execute a plan. I got to have people who can do it efficiently. And I have to have confidence that someone I'm going to invest in is going to be able to do that. I think, again, it's that first impression. I think you be a free spirit if you want to, but understand you're in an organization that's dedicated to allocating resources to deliver a service or product and create value for the investors and opportunities for the employees. So that's what you're there for.
I think that's a great call out. And I would take what you just said and basically say, hey, you need to prove that you're going to earn your seat, because it's not free, right? That's a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 salary that they're going to be spending on you.
Exactly.
Let me talk about mentorship. You mentioned it. Did you have a mentor growing up, through your life? Was there anybody that stood out to you?
No, there really wasn't, because, again, I grew up in the hard scrabble life. As I tell people, I'm not complaining, I'm not bragging. It was a tough life, okay? When my older brothers spent more time in jail than they did in the classroom in a small town, that's not a good thing. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, the deck's stacked against you. So I really didn't have a mentor. In fact, the counselor at the high school wouldn't even talk to me. All it did was increase my determination to overcome all those obstacles and go ahead and achieve what I wanted to achieve anyway. But I did have the good fortune of working with some wonderful people in my career. The first was when I went to work at the international division of the Coleman Company to work with Sheldon Coleman Sr., whose father had founded the company in 1902 or 1903, the year Sheldon was born. Sheldon was one of the most incredible, in fact, the most incredible executive I ever met in my life. And just the opportunity to work around him. He didn't take me under his wing to be a mentor, really, but just watching how he handled the crowd, how he interacted with people, how he treated everyone with respect. He made everyone feel like they were really special. And no matter if you were working on the factory floor or you were the CEO of a major company doing business with the Coleman Company. So you learn from people like that. I also learned from the recently retired, about 2 years ago, president and CEO of Wendy's, a guy named Emil Brolick. Emil and I worked together for a number of years, and he's another guy who taught me that what I call integrated brand strategy. A brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant, very demanding, very tough. But to just watch how he conducts himself and the way he does business and the respect that people have for him, even though it, again, didn't take me under his wing, hey, come on, I'm going to mentor you. But just if you're around people who have great habits, who are successful, who are willing to let you challenge them and have conversations with them, learn from it. And that's what I did. I learned at every opportunity. And I had the good fortune of working around some very special people.
I think that's a good call out too, where, a lot of times folks are looking for a mentor, or they say, oh, it's too hard to find a mentor. But your point is, hey, it doesn't have to be this super established relationship. If there are super smart people around you, just open your ears, open your eyes, observe, listen, learn, maybe ask some questions. And in some sort of sense, they act as a mentor through just the way that they carry themselves in their actions, as long as you're willing to receive that and listen and try to learn from it.
I call it practicing the ancient arts of listening and observation. I mean, really, listen to what people say, observe their behavior, interact with them at the appropriate time, and don't waste their time, obviously. But I mean, the biggest mentor you have is the guy you see in the mirror in the morning. Start there. I mean, make sure you're prepared. And then when people go out, you're only asking for the opportunity to earn people's trust.
Right.
Okay. And once they start trusting you and seeing what you can do, know you're committed, and the way you carry yourself and the way you talk, et cetera, even though they're not going to take you under their wing as a mentor, that you're going to be around people who are going to be incredibly talented, incredibly successful. Most of them are really good people, not all of them, and learn from it. I mean, discard the things that don't work and add to your list of skills and talents, those things that do. It's plenty of opportunities out there to do that.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about success. I think there's a lot of different ways that people define success. What is your definition of success, Charles? And what is your guiding light?
Well, I've always been incredibly internally motivated, and I think for the right reasons. But I will tell you that I was motivated to get out of the lifestyle that I was in. Okay, that I was born into. No offense to my parents tried their best, But I was incredibly motivated from a very young age because I knew I could achieve something if I stayed focused, didn't expect any entitlement to be given to me, just give me the opportunity to earn trust. So I had multiple measures for success. Certainly the first one was get a college degree. How important was that? Now I have this membership card that says I have the opportunity, knock on a door and maybe get in where I can then prove myself. But I never would have had that opportunity if I didn't get the first step, which is getting the college degree, which I paid for on my own because, again, my family had no money. And then I began to measure my success, not in just material ways, but of course you have to achieve certain things so you can have a lifestyle. You got to buy a suit. Back then you did. You have to be able to, get to work and those kinds of things. So you have to be able to have some of those material benefits. But as you get older, like I have, where you really find that you measure your success, like in my case, I've been married almost 39 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
And during that time, I've been gone most of the time. And we've raised a child. We've had a child together, and she's currently working on a master's degree in engineering.
Wow.
And I also, my real success now is this feeling I get when I can help others. I've helped a lot of my nieces and nephews, come from a very large family, get through college, paying their dorm rent, things like that. But my true feeling of success now has come as president and CEO of the last two companies to turn a company around, to look at my colleagues, get the opportunity to advance their careers so I can give them promotions and raises. We can buy more things from the suppliers in the community. We create more jobs, and to sit back, I don't want any credit for anything. But when I can take a company, turn it around, sell it successfully, and share the wealth that I've made and share it with others, man, I tell you, that is an incredibly good feeling. If more people are more generous like that, I think the world would be better off. But I really do feel that that's where my success is, when I'm helping others. Because when you give without measure, you'll get it back tenfold and probably 10,000-fold, because you never know.
Well, let's unpack that. You've said that before, like if you give without measure, you'll get it back tenfold. So walk me through, because that's tough, Charles. Like, there's so much this kind of me first mentality these days that it's, hey, this is my money, this is my time, these are my resources. How do you just give without measure and say, okay, I'm going to give my time, my money, and my resources to others? How do you do it?
Well, certainly you give your time. I have always given my time to my colleagues and the people that work for me. When I've gone in and taken over either a department or an entire company, my commitment is always this. I'm going to come into an organization. I'm going to share everything that I have. I'm going to give everything that I have. I'm going to tell you it's not your right to challenge me. It's your obligation. Do it with respect, and let's focus on improving the performance of this company. And if you are the same employee in 18 to 36 months, I should be fired because I've been a failure. I should be able to make you so much more productive. This company that they said, and I've done this 4 times to a CEO, we'll never get this thing turned around. Are you kidding me? We were so successful, because you got to create a winning culture, and you do that by giving without measure, by giving your time, by showing that you're there, you're helping everyone find some success, get some small wins, build on that. And so all of those are ways of giving without measure. I've given up money that I could have taken. Believe me, I would like to have had it, but I knew it was important to keep my colleagues on board so we could get even more when we sold the company. And it worked perfectly. Is it risky? Yeah, but it's just who I am, right or wrong.
Let's talk about college a little bit. You listening to you speak about your time, I think you went to, what was it, Kansas State or what?
Kansas State University, I certainly did.
I mean, you sound very proud to have gone there. Today, I think there's a paradigm switch where folks are saying, do we need to go to college, or is it more important to just get started in the workforce and start building that experience? Well, what do you have to say to that?
I think it depends on what you want to do. When I look at people going deeply into debt to get an art philosophy or art history degree with no prospect of getting a job, look, I'm a Renaissance guy. I love study. I love science. I love history. I could have spent my life reading history books and literature and learning other languages. I never would have made a living at it.
Right.
But I think I have people in my family that I've counseled about that. Look, there are over 6 million unfilled jobs in this country. There are hundreds of thousands of technical jobs that are unfilled. If you have that propensity and you don't think college is right for you, then go get the technical skill and the training. I know guys who've made terrific living doing that. So I think it depends. The idea of going to college, a four-year institution, especially like where I went, Kansas State, it's a college town. I mean, it's purely, it's a very rural, isolated place. It's beautiful, and it's a college town. It's a great experience. But I wouldn't have done it and gone into debt if I thought, I was never going to get anywhere with it. So I think it's a decision that I think people need to think about even more seriously, because it's so easy to take on so much debt now and to be burdened with that. So, it depends on what you want to do. I have a nephew that got a degree in archaeology. Well, he's never used it because he can't get a job.
Right.
I mean, they're not. I have a very smart, I have several very smart cousins, one of whom his son came home. He was going to Oklahoma State at the time. Came home and said, "Dad, I've decided I'm going to change my major to philosophy." He said, "Son, that's brilliant." My cousin happens to be a very successful engineer. He said, "Son, that's brilliant. Why don't you go on all the job search sites and do a search on philosophers and see how many of them are getting hired right now and what kind of pay they're getting and company car and all the extra benefits?" Meaning, would it be fun to study philosophy? Yeah, but what are you going to do? So I think you just got to decide, what is it you want to do with life? What are your goals, like I said earlier? What do you want to achieve? And what is going to be the best path to get there? To me, it's like running a business. I'm going to allocate resources. I'm going to expect returns for those resources. My resource going to college was my time, my money, my effort, the jobs I held when I was going to school. And I went to study something that would get me a return, and it has.
You sound like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but just from listening, Charles, you sound like a no excuses type of guy. That probably has to do a lot with your upbringing and how you've been able to mold and shape your life to be the successful person that you are today. What happens when somebody, if your daughter came to you, or to kind of depersonalize it, if somebody came to you and said, "Charles, it's just too hard. I can't do it." I mean, what is your pep talk to them?
My daughter did that. "Oh, it's so difficult." I said, "Well, first, what are your options? What are you going to do? How could failure be an option?" And being the Renaissance guy with the historical perspective, I say, think about we as we grew up as a human race. What if you had decided in medieval Europe that, you didn't want to go out and work on your crops today, because you just didn't feel up to it? I said, that's fine, but you'll starve to death during the winter. I mean, it's just a cruel reality. I mean, for me, failure was never an option. I couldn't have borrowed $10 from my parents if I had to, because they had no money. It just was never an option. And so when we think, oh, life's so hard, yes, it is hard. But the alternative is far worse. Suck it up and go for it. I mean, you just can't let those things get you down, because once they start getting you down, you're done.
Well, it kind of reminds me of a quote I saw you say in an interview, which was, "Reasonable men come to reasonable conclusions."
That's correct.
What happens, though, in an organization or in life when you're dealing with unreasonable people? Well, what do you do in that situation?
I've been in that situation, and with disastrous effects, especially for the people who are unreasonable. I'll just give you a quick example. When I was at Captain D's, we turned it around 3 consecutive years of record sales and profits, ran a very successful sale process. Piper Jaffray was the investment banker on it, ended up selling the company, which we brought from nowhere, for $160 million. Well, the owners were very unreasonable. They came in and first thing they did, they fired all of us that did the turnaround. Well, devastated a lot of our lives. Believe me, that was hard. Because I couldn't get them to be reasonable, because we're going to do it our way. Well, they got their way. They wasted a lot of us in the process. Most of us bounced back. Obviously, I bounced back from that and went on to what I'm still doing. But what happened to these very unreasonable investors? The company they bought for $160 million, they sold 6 years later for $22 million.
Wow.
They lost $138 million. They went out of business. They all got sued by their investors. And they not only had to liquidate their company, they personally, because of their arrogance and their greed, lost everything. Sometimes people are just going to be unreasonable. I have had another incident where dealing with an extremely obstinate and irrational and unreasonable CEO, and I went to the board of directors and said, here's the choice. One of us goes. Who's going? I said, I'll go gladly because I'll go get another job. But I don't want to stay if he's staying because the company will go broke anyway. And I don't want to waste any more time here. And so, well, we could fire you for this. Yes, you can. If so, that's fine. I'll thank you. It's been a pleasure working here, and I'll go find my next job. And they fired him, and we turned around and we're highly successful and made a lot of money in the process. So it happens. Business, like everything, is randomly populated with people of all types. Okay, you're going to run into all types, and no matter what your career is, you're going to run into all types. It's our ability to navigate through that, how you think personally about dealing with other people, how you interact, and how you deal with the unreasonable as well as the reasonable people, because you're going to meet them all.
Isn't that the truth?
It is.
I think, I was listening to an interview with Arianna Huffington of the Huffington Post, and she has a policy at her company, which is if you have a problem, go say it to that person's face. But if we find out you're talking behind someone's back, consider this your last warning. I love that aspect. I think today's company culture is so focused on secrecy, reporting your grievances to HR. Would you agree? Do you think that that's kind of a failure in the system, and Arianna's approach of having these one-on-one tough conversations is a much better approach?
Arianna is more, not that I know her, is more patient than I am. When I go into an organization, I say, look, here my rules are simple. We treat everyone with respect. We tolerate disrespect from no one. I said, but one thing I absolutely detest is Machiavellian, manipulative, backstabbing politics. I said, I'll just tell you this up front. This is not a moral or emotional issue with me. It's just straightforward so that you know. If I find anyone practicing manipulative, Machiavellian, backstabbing politics here in this organization, please understand this, that the terms of your resignation are two. They're unconditional and immediate. Simple as that. That's the rule. If you don't like it, I'll help you go find another job. Again, it's not an emotional or moral issue with me. But if you're going to practice that, I can't have you ruining a company that we're trying to fix. I've had several people then leave because they couldn't give up their bad habits. Fine. I wished them well. I didn't hold anything against them. I just wanted them out of the organization, and I made it clear. It's what I've talked about so often with people. The three commons that I use in life are common sense, common decency, common courtesy. We don't need to go to a manual somewhere to figure out whether or not you should, be saying certain things or acting a certain way towards others of your colleagues. It's just, why? It's just practice a little of the common sense, common decency, common courtesy. It works every time. It's worked for me in more than 70 countries. And I'm a Scandinavian-looking guy, tall and blonde and everything. And I've been in a lot of places people don't look like I do. Works every time.
Let's unpack those 3 C's. How did you come up with that? Do you remember?
Well, when I was growing up, my dad, with his 6th grade education, just a good old boy, he said, son, you got to have horse sense, is what he called it, horse sense. Well, since I'm so sophisticated, I evolved into common sense. And it's just the practice of the way I try to deal with people and seeing how others deal poorly with people and how I wanted to be treated, that they just, over time, they just evolved. Just came to me, common sense, common decency, common courtesy. I'm telling you, they work every time. Sometimes you get people that are so evil, so bad, so obstinate, it's not going to work. But overall, it's just something, as I continually think, and I'm continually evolving my personality. I have my fundamentals that are fundamental to who I am, but I'm always adapting and learning and making my own course corrections because the world around us is so dynamic. And that, to me, those 3 commons were ways to really help consistently navigate through any situation I found myself in on a global basis.
Right. No, I absolutely love that. And it's simple. It's simple to remember. And to your point, whether it's horse sense or common sense, I think the takeaway there is just treat others the way that you would like to be treated. And if you do that, then you'll be able to build some relationships that are more meaningful. You'll be able to live a life that's more meaningful and hopefully more successful.
Absolutely. It's what I say in my organization: treat everyone with respect, tolerate disrespect from no one. You know, when I tolerate, I mean, I don't tolerate disrespect. Doesn't mean I go get in a fist fight with someone.
Right.
You know, because I worked in restaurant brands that were mostly franchised. I told the franchisees, if you treat us disrespectfully, then we won't help you. We're not going to work with you. When you finally decide you can call and work with us on a respectful basis, we'll work with you. Otherwise, don't come calling. I mean, it's simple as that. We have to go out of our way and contort ourselves to be bad. I mean, it's just so simple. It is. It's so simple to be the other way.
It's too much work. Let's talk about your marriage, 39 years. I mean, that is no small task. You've been working kind of at this high level in the industry, the restaurant industry, for 30 years. You have a daughter who's got, her own life that she's trying to build. She's going to school for a master's degree. Did you have work-life balance during that time? Is there a such thing as work-life balance when you're trying to get to the levels of CEO and run successful companies?
By most measures, no. People would say you don't have work-life balance. But my commitment in life was I'm going to be sure that my family is always cared for. And I'm going to do whatever I have to do. But at the same time, I have a lot of work to do to come from where I came from and to get where I want to go. I mean, I will be honest. I was always the one willing to be gone the longest, take the longest trips, travel the farthest, take the toughest assignments given to me. I'll go, I'll do it. And my wife understood that. And my daughter understood that. So they realized that I had this family's best interest in mind, but I had to take a lot of long plane rides and be gone. I was gone 1 year, 8 months. But you just have to do what you have to do, and you make the most of the time that you have, and again, it's just like always building on strengths and minimizing weaknesses.
For the people that are at maybe the beginning of that path, they're en route to have a career like yours, Charles. What would you recommend to them as far as finding a partner that just understands that their significant other is going to have to work hard, might be traveling 8 months out of the year? I mean, what are those? How did you find such a partner to just put up with your stuff?
Well, she made a bad decision. No, I guess you just know when you do. I mean, I'm so candid and so honest. I'm brutally candid, but very respectfully so, that I just made it clear this is who I am and what I do. I mean, I met my wife, she's 9 years younger than I am, still married to me. Do you believe that?
No.
It's true. I had just come back from 4 weeks in the Middle East and Europe, and we dated, and a couple weeks later, I said, well, I'll call you when I get back. Well, where are you going? Well, I forget, 3 or 4 week trip. I'll be back after that. What? I said, look, this is who I am. This is what I do for a living. Okay. Sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry because I love every minute of it.
Right. But
just lay out the rules. If this works for you, fine. If not, then I obviously am the wrong guy for you. I'm just candidly honest about things all the time. Respectfully so, but candidly honest.
Well, I think that you hit two important words there: respectful, but candid and honest. I think maybe some of the, with divorce rates, what they are today, 50% basically, maybe not enough people are having candid, respectful conversations right up front. And, they get married and then 5 or 6 years later, sometimes less, they start having those conversations, the candid conversations. They're not as respectful anymore. And maybe that's the reason why we're in the trouble that we are today as far as marriage goes. So,
well, I think it is. I mean, I grew up in a very traditional, old-fashioned families where, like my mom and dad got married and they never even looked at another man or woman until the day they died. And my aunts and uncles were all the same way. I mean, that's just the way it was. And you see that it's not all fun and games in life. It's not. Mostly it's not. So just understand that's what you're going to get into and just be, like I said, candid and honest about it. We all make compromises and trade-offs in life, and we have to. And I don't mean those that violate your inner soul. Don't get me wrong on that. Well, my compromise is I guess I can embezzle a couple $1 million from this company. It'll be fine, right? No, I mean, you don't do stuff like that. But life is going to be full of compromises and trade-offs. In the case like my case, where my wife has a college education but never has worked outside the home, then there were a lot of compromises and trade-offs on her part because she knew I had to be gone all the time.
Can you think of maybe what one of the biggest compromises you've had to make over the years? One that stood out to you, it was a real gut check moment for you?
Well, it's really tough when you're gone on holidays and birthdays, and I've had to do that. This goes back several years ago, but when I was at the international division of the Coleman Company, we were doing a lot of business in Iran during the time of the Shah of Iran and when that whole thing fell apart. And we were at risk of losing several $1 million. And a colleague and I had to really hustle working with a couple, I can remember the name of the banks, Bank Milli Iran and Bank Saderat Iran, and a couple of New York banks to make sure that we got several $1 million that we were owed. This wasn't something we were taking illegally out of the country before the country fell, before the Shah of Iran literally left and went down to Egypt, and the whole thing. I mean, we see where Iran is today. That was the start of it. And I mean, we worked right through Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. I mean, we worked through the end of the year. I mean, I'll see you when I get back. I mean, that was, because those holidays are very important to us, but it was just one of those things. That was a tough one, and but we got it all done, and I was obviously there at my daughter's birth, by the way. I didn't miss that.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Let me shift gears just a little bit to Johnny Rockets. You were once quoted saying about Johnny or Johnny Rockets rather, that in the past they had focused on kind of internal opinions on how to move the company along. When you came in as CEO, you wanted to focus more on the opinions of past and future guests and focus more on that data. Were there any big lessons that you learned from your experience at Johnny Rockets?
Yeah, they were completely off. Well, I've learned it everywhere I've gone to do a turnaround. Completely off strategy, sitting around, listening to themselves talk in the office and not being out where they should be. The executives in the restaurants talking to customers and finding out if you're providing the kind of customer experience that they want. It's amazing how far away executives can get from where the real business takes place. You wonder what's going on in the business. Go talk to your area managers, or I speak Spanish. I'd love to go talk to the kitchen staff because most of them speak Spanish. One thing I always used to do is it's difficult to do in some brands. When I was at the Pizza Hut, when we had the freestanding stores, we called them the Red Roofs. Go to a store and look at the cars in the parking lot. Who's there? I mean, you're not going to see many Maseratis or Jaguars. Understand who your customers are. They didn't understand that. They were trying to be something that did not match what their brand image was with consumers at all, completely out of alignment. So you got to really listen to what your target demographics and core users are saying and how you deliver the kind of experience that they're looking at and anticipating and expecting with your brand. As I say in marketing, by the way, I never studied marketing, but when I got my first marketing job, it came with a raise, so I took it.
Right.
And because I always thought it was about really good planning and execution, which it is, by the way. But marketing is trying to create a willing exchange of your goods or services with someone over whom you have no control. Okay, you better understand what that customer's needs and wants are, and you better figure out a way to get them to him or her, and figure out a way to promote the brand always through three things: message, media, and creative. What's the message you're saying has to be incredibly succinct. What forms of media are used to drop that message right in that potential customer's lap? And what does the creative look like so you can attract someone's attention in half a second or less? So it's all fundamental. People just get so far off base. So, again, listen to themselves rather than listen to their guests. That's who they need to talk to.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think that one thing that some brands miss today is they're having a hard time telling their story. I mean, there's so many different channels of media, whether it's on social media or it's your website or it's email marketing or it's digital advertising. There seems to be a disconnect on how the brand story is being told across all those channels. And you once said in an interview, building a brand is like telling a tale that never gets completely told. If you stop telling the tale, the brand dies. So what are some of those recommendations you might have for brands out there today that don't seem to be telling the story very well?
Well, what is the core of the brand? Don't tell a story that's contrived, and I hate these stories that are cute too. Try to be cute with people. People don't want to hear that. People don't have time for that. As I say, we're all on sensory overload. Okay, I mean, we get 10,000 stimuli a day. We remember 10. Time is the currency of the 21st century. Respect people's time. Interact your brand with them in a way that really respects their time. Don't waste it, and give them what it is that you have discovered through your research that they are looking for by interacting with your brand, and continue to tell that tale. Brands have to evolve. Brands are living entities. I mean, I compare it to your health. Hey, show me your health. Send your health over here and let me take a look. No, but you see manifestations of it. Same with a brand. Everything about your living brand is a manifestation of whether it's bricks and mortar or your message or advertising, whatever it is. Make sure you understand what that story is you're telling, and continually tell that in a way that's engaging and that delivers what your target demographics and core users are looking for. Don't shove something on them that is meaningless. I mean, Johnny Rock's a classic example. They thought they were a diner. Research showed consumers have zero interest in diners. Why do you want to go out and double down on diners? They actually thought, I don't know if you've ever been to Johnny Rockets. It wouldn't surprise you if you haven't.
I have been to a Johnny Rockets, yes.
Did they sing while you were there? The workers sing?
They didn't sing when I was there, no.
Well, I stopped it when I got there because I thought that was one of the most. Look, you got millennials who are connected to the world via technology, and you're going to sing some stupid 1950 song that no one knows and have them dance around. I mean, it makes no sense at all.
Right.
But they thought if we just danced more and we twirled the straws more and we painted smiley faces with ketchup on plates, that was going to do it. I mean, are you kidding me? Talk about an insult to today's consumer. They didn't understand what their brand was and how it interacted, and that's why they were doing so badly. We changed all that, got in line with the consumer, turned it around, and we're doing extremely well in a very difficult restaurant market. Brands have to evolve, and at times along the way, you really have to jettison those things that are no longer important. When we redid Johnny Rockets, we retained those visual cues that were important to what the brand was. But we jettisoned so much other stuff because it was totally irrelevant. And oh my gosh, did people panic? Oh, how can you do that? Well, we did that because look how sales took off. Did the same thing at Peter Piper Pizza. I mean, it hadn't changed. It hadn't evolved for 30 years. And we dramatically changed it based on what the research told us. And when I left, and we sold that very, very successfully, we had hit 56 consecutive months of same-store sales growth. And they'd been down for 4 years before we started working on it. You can do it. It's possible. Tell a brand story, but understand, be rational, reasonable about it. Understand to whom you're marketing your brand and what resonates with them. And give great service, by the way.
Right. Well, I think service is a key piece that a lot of people are missing these days. They feel like the expectation is, well, you come in, I give you your food, and you eat, and then you leave, and you're supposed to be giving everybody a 5-star review. And that's not how it works. You don't get to those 5-star reviews unless service is really above and beyond what the expectation is.
I don't know if we have any people that are involved in this podcast that are in the restaurant business, working in the restaurant. It's a fabulous industry to be in, by the way. It's huge. It's fun. Smart people, a lot of fun. But in the restaurant business, what people really fail to understand, excuse me, the most important part of a restaurant, every restaurant, is the menu. Because in the menu, it's where you deliver or violate the brand promise, where operations, training, purchasing, distribution, finance, HR, everything comes together there, and it's all about delivering a great, memorable experience to your customer every time. And once you understand that, and your strategy as a CEO is I call it integrated brand strategy, integrates all of those in alignment, put people in alignment with the right skills, motivate them to exceed their highest expectations. You can take these old tired brands and make them just hum. Everything about your brand, every touch point about your brand is important. We went through and walked through our Johnny Rocket stores. Where does this brand touch people? The salt shaker. Well, we don't want a salt packet. We want a salt mill. They can grind their own salt. Same with pepper. Everything is a touch point. Where do we put the napkins in? How clean is the bathroom? What's the door in the bathroom look like? Do we have the front door? Everything is part of your brand image. You can't overlook anything. And if you do what, like you just said, and you just resign yourself to the fact that we're just going to be a cheap discount store. Okay, I'll see you when you declare bankruptcy, and and you're liquidating, because that's next. That's where you go next. And viable brands can be kept alive for a long time when they are rejuvenated and properly managed with as I say, a really solid strategy, adequately funded, flawlessly executed, wins every time. You don't have to be the prettiest, sexiest brand around. You can do it because you're taking care of your guests and understanding what they want.
I love that. I want to shift to some rapid fire questions as we kind of get to the tail end of our time here. So here's my first one. It's kind of a fun one. Stick with me here and let me know if it doesn't make sense, because I came up with it myself. But if you could send a postcard to anybody, past or present, who would you send it to and what would it say?
I'd love to have met General Eisenhower. I've always been fascinated. I've read a lot of books that an author named Stephen Ambrose wrote about General Eisenhower. I would love to sit down and have a conversation with General Eisenhower.
Nice. Speaking of reading, do you like to read?
I read a lot. I read a lot of books.
So what are the top 3 that you would recommend to our listeners?
Well, right now, there's a fabulous book called 1421, The Year the Chinese Discovered the World, written by a captain of a nuclear sub in the British Navy, a guy named Gavin Menzies. And I'm telling you, it turns the world upside down. I mean, the Chinese were in South America, the Arctic, the Antarctic, North America, 1421, before Columbus ever thought about, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina. and it's absolutely an unbelievably good book. It's fantastic. There's another one called, because I love history, 1491. And that was what the New World really looked like, as they've proven through forensic studies, archaeology, anthropology, all these other things, what it really looked like before the arrival of the Europeans. Fabulous, fabulous book. And one that I really recently enjoyed, it's heavy reading, is called The Origins of Political Order. And in today's, what I want to say, bizarre world, the way things are going on, it's written by Francis Fukuyama, a brilliant writer. And it's from pre-humans through the French Revolution. He's followed that up with one called Political Order and Political Decay. I'm reading that one now. But it literally lays out, and when you look around and see what's going on today in politics, it's a repeat of what's been going on in politics since the early Chinese dynasties, since the Sumerians, since the Persians. I mean, it's really incredible. Those are 3 of them that I highly recommend. And there's so many others, so many great books out there. You noticed I didn't mention a business book, because
I did notice that.
I rarely read a business book, because most, quite frankly, aren't worth the paper they're written on. There are some good ones. Good to Great was good. Tipping Point, Kaizen was a hard read, but excellent. I mean, there are some, but for the most part, the real learning comes in understanding where we came from, where we evolved from, what were the trends, what has shaped who we are as a human race today, and what were those events, and how did they impact us. And that's where the knowledge is, in my opinion.
Right. Well, you're not the first successful person to ever say that. I think a lot of successful CEOs read a lot of history, and they all say human nature hasn't changed much. So if you want to see where the world is going, look back to the past, because there's some good examples of things that have happened.
Absolutely. That is exactly right. Like I said, most of those business books, are the 7 habits or the 9 habits. No, this is the 1 habit. I mean, you have to be successful. No, come on, man. I mean, no. Go read history. Start to fill your brain with things you can assimilate and start to shape your own philosophy. And there's so much to be learned out there.
2 more questions for you, Charles. Here's the first one. You've been to 70 countries. If somebody listening to this podcast has never been to one, what would be your recommendation? What's the one place they need to go see and why?
And it depends on what you want to do. But my opinion, just for sheer beauty, a place that's so far removed, the clean air, go to New Zealand. I love New Zealand. I've been there probably 20 times. I absolutely love New Zealand. It's really a very relaxing place. When I first went there, it was hardly developed. I mean, this is going on 40 years ago. But now it's modern. I mean, they great food, great wine, a lovely place. I highly recommend New Zealand. And a place that I've always really enjoyed just because it's so vibrant, although it's crowded, but it's Hong Kong. Couldn't be more polar different than New Zealand on total opposite ends. But if you're going to go to two and you want to see two extremes of life, go to New Zealand. And since you're over in that part of the world, go to Hong Kong.
Well, I've not been to New Zealand or Hong Kong. I've done some Europe. So now I think you've inspired me to go to New Zealand. So I'll send you a postcard when I get there. All right, here's the last question for you. If you could hit the easy button on any of your life experiences and just skip past all the hard stuff and get right to the lesson, which one would it be?
Well, actually, I've thought about that many times. I really do wish, I don't dwell on it, don't get me wrong, that I would have had someone I could have gone to ask about, just for some guidance on, where should I go and how do I get into college and what should I study and what could I possibly become? Look, I think I've been pretty successful. I'm very happy with my life, don't get me wrong. But I honestly think I had much more that I could have done and hopefully still will do. I just wish I could have gone to someone because, again, my dad had a 6th grade education. He's an oil field worker. I mean, my mom had an 8th grade education and raised kids. I mean, I'm from 68 grandkids in our 2 families. Yeah, I mean, so I just didn't have anyone to turn to. And that's why I take so seriously trying to share anything that I can, any perspective, wisdom, mentorship, whatever, because I believe in giving that way without measure. It really makes me feel good. I wish someone might have given me a little help along the way. Didn't happen. It's all right. I overcame it.
Well, that's important. I think the key takeaway there is that you didn't let it stop you from getting to the point you are today, which I think it's so easy to make those excuses and to give up. So congratulations for that.
Well, thanks. One piece of philosophy I'll pass on real quickly. When I was 20 years old at K-State, working at JD's Pizza Parlor, trying to make a living, had no car, walking to class, all that. And I thought, God, this is so hard. I'm never going to make it. And I sat down and I said, you know what? You can choose not to be a victim of your past. That's my decision this day going forward. I will choose not to be a victim of my past. We can all do it. Just choose not to be a victim of your past, okay? And work hard, and you can achieve. There's unlimited opportunities out there for people who really want to work hard and try the 3 commons and get out there and do something.
I love it. I think that's a great piece of wisdom to end on. If folks wanted to follow you, Charles, and see what your next act was, your next big thing, is there a recommendation online? Should they follow you on LinkedIn? Do you have a Twitter? I mean, how does that work?
The only place they'll find me, remember, I'm a Renaissance guy. I was born in 1500, stayed in a cocoon for 450 years before I popped out, is on LinkedIn.
Charles, thank you so much for your time today. This was a great interview, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time, and all the best to you. Just keep the faith. Things will go well.
Hey guys, quick note before you leave. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Leaders. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review. As we try to grow the show and invite more leaders to share their stories, every subscribe, rating, and review really helps expose the podcast to new ears. And a quick thank you to today's guest and our sound engineer, Jonathan Costco. Until next time, I'm James Fratzke.